That day, the sky over San Francisco wore its signature winter coat, thick with fog and damp chill curling around each skyscraper. The conference hall was brightly lit on the top floor of Martin Technologies, but the glow could not disperse the heavy atmosphere hanging over the room. Ryder Martin sat at the head of the long glass-topped table, his cold blue eyes sweeping over each face in the boardroom. His hands were clasped tightly together, the knuckles pale, his only tell that he was struggling to keep his composure. Across from him sat Evelyn Martin, a woman in her 50s, dressed in an elegant tweed suit, her smile sharp as a blade. She leaned forward, her voice carrying clearly each word like a pinprick. "The clause in my brother's will. Your father's remains in effect, Ryder. Before your 35th birthday, you must marry. If not, this CEO seat will be mine." The room fell utterly silent. A few board members exchanged glances. Others pretended to study their documents to avoid Ryder's gaze. Rumors about this clause were nothing new, but Evelyn had never stated it openly before the entire board until today. Ryder leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting toward the foggy sky beyond the glass wall. He had endured dozens of political dates arranged by the PR team, meeting women ranging from senators' daughters to CEOs of major corporations. Yet none had made him want to commit, let alone marry. Pressing his lips together, his voice was low, but tinged with an undeniable weariness. "Evelyn, I've said this before. I don't need an arranged marriage to keep this company." Evelyn let out a soft laugh, the sound echoing in the enclosed room, as though she had just claimed a decisive move. "This isn't about feelings, Ryder. It's a binding legal condition. Your father believed that only a man with a stable family could lead Martin Technologies for the long haul." An elderly board member voiced his agreement. Another nodded silently. It was as if everything had been arranged to corner Ryder. The air felt dense, like the fog outside pressing hard against the glass walls. Ryder could feel invisible cords tightening around his throat. Those expectant stares, those half-smiles, all of it felt like a challenge. And then, whether from anger, the need to shatter their smug game, or simply from that ingrained streak of defiance, Ryder blurted out the words that would change his life forever. "The next woman who walks into this room, I'll marry her." A small ripple of murmurs spread. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth curling, as if she had been waiting for precisely this. Just seconds later, a knock sounded at the door. A young woman entered carrying a tray of lattes and a bag of warm, fragrant waffles. She wore a simple cream-colored uniform, her curly hair pulled back with a few loose strands brushing her sun-kissed cheeks. Slightly out of breath, she spoke, "Sorry. Delivery for the Martin Technologies boardroom," who ordered 3 lattes and 1 bag of special waffles. The scent of fresh coffee drifted into the room, momentarily masking the thick tension. Ryder turned, and his gaze stopped. The deep brown eyes of the young woman held a mixture of surprise and shyness. Yet there was a quiet strength in them, the kind born of independence. Evelyn was the one to break the silence. "Well, how timely. Ryder, is this the next woman you just mentioned?" A few chuckles rippled through the room, part mocking, part intrigued. Ryder did not take his eyes off the coffee delivery girl. He didn't know her name, where she came from, but something stirred within him, a blend of defiance, curiosity, and a desire to upend the rules Evelyn had set. He rose from his seat and walked toward her. She instinctively stepped back, clutching the tray of coffee like a shield. But Ryder only smiled a smile both courteous and dangerous. "What's your name, Oriana?" "Oriana Martinez." Ryder gave a slight nod. "Oriana, welcome to Martin Technologies, and perhaps to something bigger than that." The words set off another wave of murmurs in the boardroom. Evelyn crossed her arms, her eyes glinting with amusement. As for Oriana, she had no idea what kind of game she had just stumbled into, only that her heartbeat had picked up pace. Outside, fog still blanketed the San Francisco Bay, but inside, another kind of storm had just formed, a storm that would sweep away calculations, strategies, and the hearts of two people who were never meant to cross paths. Following this story, you can feel that faint spark between Ryder and Oriana from their first moment. Is this just another power play among the elite, or the beginning of a love no one saw coming? The boardroom door closed behind Oriana, yet the weight of dozens of eyes still lingered on her back, like fine needles pricking into her skin. She had no idea why she had just been pulled into such a strange situation. All because of a tray of coffee, a few waffles, and an offhand comment from a powerful man she had never met before. Ryder Martin walked beside her, his stride long and steady, leading straight toward his private office. No explanation, no glance back. Only their footsteps echoed against the polished wooden floor, mingled with the patter of rain tapping against the glass outside. Ryder's office sat apart at the highest corner of the tower. When the automatic door closed, it was as if the outside world had been cut off entirely. There was only the scent of oak wood, the rich aroma of fresh coffee from the tray in Oriana's hands, and a thick, heavy silence. He turned around, bracing both hands on the edge of his desk, his blue eyes cold, as if weighing $1 billion deal. "Do you know what just happened out there?" Ryder began, his low, husky voice, leaving no room for small talk. Oriana frowned. "I just delivered coffee. I don't know why everyone was looking at me like that. Because I just said I'd marry the next woman who walked into the boardroom. And you walked in." She froze. For a second, Oriana thought she'd misheard. "Mary, are you joking?" Ryder said, "I've never joked about anything that concerns this company," enunciating each word with cold certainty. "And now I need you to cooperate." Her eyes widened. "You want me to marry you? A stranger after 5 minutes?" Ryder stepped away from the desk, closing the distance between them until she could see her reflection in his eyes. "Hear me out," he said, his voice lowered, but every word still firm. "My father left a clause in his will. I must be married before I turn 35, or control of the company will go to my Aunt Evelyn. She doesn't just want the position. She wants to dismantle everything I've built. I need a legal marriage at least for a year to keep this company out of her hands." Oriana's brows knitted together. "Why me? You could pick anyone from your circle." "That's precisely why," Ryder replied, tilting his head slightly, his tone dropping to something more challenging to refute. "I need an outsider. Someone untouched by power games, without political motives. Someone like you." She gave a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because the idea was absurd. "And what would you pay me?" "A ticket into high society." Ryder stayed silent for a few seconds before answering plainly. $3 million will be transferred as soon as we register the marriage, plus a monthly allowance. You'll live in a private unit within my penthouse, completely separate. I'll cover all living expenses and—" He paused, his gaze locking onto hers. "I'll get your brother out of the legal trouble he's in. I'll also fund his college tuition, any school he chooses." Oriana froze. Her heart skipped when she heard Malik's name. Her younger brother had just gotten pulled into an incident in Oakland, a wrong crowd, a stormy night, and now he was facing the possibility of court. Their family couldn't afford a top lawyer, and this could ruin Malik's future forever. How long have you known about Malik?" Her voice came out hoarse. Ryder said evenly, "That I have ways of knowing what I need to know. And I know you've done everything to protect him. I respect that." Oriana's grip on the waffle bag tightened, her mind spinning. $3 million a monthly stipend, Malik's tuition paid, and a way out of a criminal record. But in exchange, she would have to enter into a fake marriage with a man whose power was intimidating to the point of being dangerous. 1 year under the same roof, even on different floors, could she keep her heart in check? "What are the terms?" she asked softly, almost in a whisper. Ryder answered immediately without hesitation. "Just one. Don't fall in love with me." Oriana lifted her gaze, meeting the sternness in his. It wasn't a joke. A line in the sand, an invisible barrier he'd built long before she walked in. Don't love him, no crossing boundaries or letting emotions contaminate a business arrangement. She let out a faint, humorless chuckle. "Afraid I'll fall for you." "Are you scared you'll fall for me?" Ryder didn't answer. He only kept his silence. At that moment, Oriana realized his silence was louder than anything he could have said. She turned, walking a few steps toward the wide window overlooking the city. The winding streets of San Francisco hid under the veil of soft rain. $3 million. 1 year as a pretend wife, Malik's future, and a man she wasn't sure she could keep at arm's length. When she turned back, her gaze was steady. "I'll do it, but—" She paused, the corners of her lips curling. "If in this 1 year you break your condition." "Then what?" Ryder's mouth lifted for the first time, revealing a smile that carried both warmth and danger. "Then I'll take the full consequences." She nodded, asking no more. Inside, Oriana knew with absolute clarity her life would never be the same from now on. Outside the glass, the rain kept falling, washing away what was old. Inside this room, an unsigned contract had already begun to tighten the thread of fate between two people who were never meant to belong to each other. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in San Francisco, the sky still draped in a thin veil of mist, like a white curtain softening the city's usual bustle. Out on the streets, the clang of cable car bells mingled with the hurried footsteps of office workers. But inside San Francisco City Hall, a different story unfolded in silence. Oriana stood before a large mirror in the waiting room, her hands lightly smoothing the hem of her pale cream dress, simple yet refined. No long veil, no bridal bouquet. Just an elegant dress her cousin had picked out for her the night before, and a pair of pointed-toe heels borrowed from a close friend. Everything was neat and understated, just enough to get through the morning as a transaction to be completed, not a celebration. The door opened. Ryder walked in wearing a deep navy suit tailored to perfection, framing his tall, broad figure. His eyes swept over her. No compliment, no remark, just the slightest nod, as if confirming everything was in place. They stepped into the marriage registration room. Only a middle-aged registrar, a photographer Ryder had hired to document the paperwork, and 2 witnesses, Ryder's private lawyer and his assistant, were present. No flowers, no music, no applause. Just the steady clack of keys on a keyboard, the soft rustle of turning pages, and a few pens laid neatly on the desk. A chill ran down Oriana's spine as the registrar began to read the formal words. This was not any girl's dream. No father was walking her down an aisle, and there was no anticipated kiss. Only pre-agreed terms and an unspoken contract are tucked behind the marriage certificate. Ryder Martin, do you agree? I do. Oriana Martinez, do you agree? I do. 2 short answers without the slightest hesitation yet. Both understood that what I said here carried an entirely different meaning from love. When the final paper was signed, the registrar gave a faint smile and handed them a copy of the marriage certificate. Ryder folded it and slipped it into his suit pocket, as if storing away the successful close of a business deal. That afternoon, Oriana followed Ryder to Bayview Tower, the tallest building in the city, where his penthouse occupied the top 3 floors. The glass-walled elevator carried them past one level after another, until the doors opened and a flood of space and light washed over her. She froze. Before her stretched a panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay, the vast water shimmering silver beneath the mist, the Golden Gate Bridge arching in the distance, like a delicate stroke against the sky. Glass walls wrapped around nearly the entire space, making her feel as though she were floating in mid-air. The living area extended across polished walnut floors, the minimalist furnishings radiating quiet luxury in every detail. The scent of fresh wood mingled with a faint trace of lavender essential oil. In one corner stood a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf filled with hardcovers interspersed with model airplanes and miniature steel frame designs, a clear signature of someone rooted in the worlds of technology and design. Ryder led her down a hallway to her private quarters, a separate apartment within the penthouse, complete with a bedroom facing the ocean, a private kitchen, and a balcony large enough for a small table and chairs. "You'll stay here," he said evenly, without the slightest shift in tone. "For anything you need, tell my assistant she'll handle it." Oriana nodded, stepping inside her fingertips, grazing the cool surface of a glass table. This apartment was 3 times the size of the place she had rented before. Everything was arranged so there would be no reason for her to leave unless she wanted to. That evening, they sat across from each other at the long dining table. Between them were elegant dishes. Ryder's private chef prepared fresh vegetable salad, seared salmon, and chilled white wine. Ryder ate slowly, his gaze pausing on her occasionally, an unspoken observation. Oriana sat with her back straight, trying to appear composed, though inside, she still felt unfamiliar and cautious. The only moment that broke the stillness was when her small spoon slipped to the floor. Ryder bent down to pick it up, his fingers brushing lightly against hers as he returned it. A fleeting touch, but enough to change the air around them, brief, elusive, and leaving behind a faint echo. After dinner, Ryder spoke just one sentence before leaving goodnight Oriana. The door closed softly, leaving her alone in the warm glow of the lights. Oriana stood by the window, gazing down at the city glittering below, wondering what story she had just stepped into. A story where the line between contract and emotion was as fragile as the mist outside, ready to dissolve at any moment. She knew that despite their agreement to keep their distance in the days ahead, it would be hard not to notice Ryder Martin, a man at once cold, mysterious, and dangerously magnetic in a way that made her cautious heart want to skip a beat. And deep inside, Oriana sensed that this was only the beginning of a journey she had never imagined. Morning at Bayview Tower began with a thin veil of mist draped over the San Francisco Bay. From the penthouse balcony, the faint sunlight filtered through patches of gray cloud, scattering silver shards of light across the water's surface. Oriana woke early as always when she worked at Sunrise Brews. The sound of the shop's old espresso machine, the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans, the scent of crisp golden waffles, all of it felt like an inseparable part of her. But today, instead of rushing to fill orders in her new apartment, she planned only to make herself a cappuccino to start the day. A faint rustling outside in the hallway caught her attention. Stepping into the living room, Oriana came upon an unexpected sight. Ryder was standing by the kitchen counter, frowning down at a sleek, brand-new espresso machine that looked like it had just come out of the box. Beside him sat what could only be described as a latte disaster. Watery foam, a cloudy brown color, and a streaky, uneven rim. He took a sip, grimaced, and set the cup down as if swallowing something dreadful. "Planning to poison yourself?" Oriana arched an eyebrow, arms folded, as she leaned against the kitchen doorway. Ryder glanced at her, the corner of his mouth tilting just slightly, but not quite, into a smile. "I just wanted to make my coffee without calling in staff. But It seems this machine hates me. She stepped forward, gently nudging him aside. The machine's not the problem. The problem is someone who doesn't know how to love coffee. Oriana scooped grounds into the filter. With a few practiced motions, tamped them just right and adjusted the pressure and water temperature. The machine hissed softly, releasing the rich, full scent of espresso, warm and comforting, better than any morning greeting. She frothed the milk into a smooth, velvety foam, poured it into the cup, and shaped a perfect heart on the cappuccino's surface with a deft twist of her wrist. Now this is coffee. Oriana slid the cup toward him, then turned to the small oven and pulled out a few crisp waffles, their buttery sweetness filling the air. And you can't have coffee without these. Ryder lifted the cup and took a sip. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if surprised by the rich, silky flavor. True artisan cafe quality. Setting it down, he looked at her with an unreadable expression. You used to work at a coffee shop. Sunrise Brews. Oriana answered evenly. My cousin's place. I started at 18 part-time at first, then full-time. Why, he asked, his fingers slowly turning the cup in his hands. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to be direct. I dropped out in my sophomore year of college. My parents died young, just me and my younger brother Malik. When he was 16, I had to work wherever I could to put him through school. The coffee shop was one of the few places that gave me flexible hours, so I could work and still take care of him. The air in the kitchen grew still. Ryder leaned back against the counter, his blue eyes darker than usual. He set the cup down and took a quiet breath, as if about to share something not easily spoken. I know what that's like, he said, his voice lower, rougher. My mother died when I was 8. My father wasn't an easy man. He was so strict that even the slightest mistake was treated as a failure. After she died, the only thing he cared about was work. I grew up in boardrooms and contract negotiations, learning not to need anyone. Oriana stayed silent, watching the morning light glint off the cappuccino cup between them. She realized underneath his cold, robust exterior, Ryder had also been a child who'd lost too much, just like Malik once had, and just like she had been. Something in her chest softened. She didn't know if it was because of his story or because of this moment, two people from worlds so far apart sharing a small matching piece of memory in a kitchen filled with sunlight. Ryder broke off a waffle, chewing slowly, his eyes still fixed on her. Are you planning to keep making coffee here every morning? Oriana shrugged the faintest curve at the corner of her lips. Depends. Whether you let me use this kitchen or not, he said. This kitchen is yours now. Light in tone, firm, as if laying out a new clause in the unspoken contract between them. Neither spoke further, but the invisible wall between them, since they met, had cracked slightly. Not enough to break, but enough for a sliver of light to slip through. And somewhere, Ryder and Oriana knew the crack would widen with each morning of cappuccinos, waffles, and stories not yet told. That morning, Los Angeles was bathed in golden sunlight, the sky as clear as a massive pane of glass. The International Convention Center stood tall, its glass facade reflecting rows of fluttering flags and the bustling flow of people coming and going. It was the Global Green Technology Conference, where Martin Technologies was set to unveil its new solar battery project, a flagship endeavor Ryder had nurtured for the past 2 years. Oriana stepped out of the car with Ryder wearing a deep blue knee-length dress that set off the warmth of her brown skin, her softly curled hair falling loosely over her shoulders. This was her first public appearance beside him since their quiet City Hall wedding. Immediately, all camera lights swung toward them. Ryder, as always, remained calm and composed, his hand brushing lightly against her back, a gesture both gentlemanly and an unspoken statement that her presence at his side was not up for debate. Inside the hall, the hum of conversation blended with the constant clicking of cameras. As they passed the display area, A familiar voice, sharp as the tip of a blade, rang out behind them. "Oh, isn't this the coffee delivery girl Ryder picked up from who knows where? I hear she's now the future Mrs. CEO of Martin Technologies." Oriana turned. Evelyn Martin stood in an emerald green gown, a string of lustrous pearls draped around her neck. Her smile was polite enough to avoid being outright offensive, but her eyes brimmed with mockery. Before Oriana could respond, Ryder spoke, his tone low and deliberate. "Evelyn, make the introduction properly. This is my wife, Oriana Martin. And let me be clear, she is not the CEO of Martin Technologies. She is someone I respect." A few curious glances nearby shifted in expression. Still, Evelyn only lifted her shoulders in a slight shrug, lips curling into a cold smile, before walking off with her circle of loyal shareholders. Oriana drew in a slow breath, saying nothing, but her grip tightened slightly around the takeaway cappuccino she had picked up at the event's refreshment station. The conference was running smoothly when a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance. It took Oriana a few seconds to recognize Malik. He wore a gray hoodie, sweat beading his forehead, his eyes darting around as if searching for someone. "Malik." She immediately moved toward her younger brother, worry filling her voice. "What are you doing here?" Malik panted, glancing over his shoulder. "There are two guys, the same security men from last time. They've been following me since this morning." Ryder was already beside them, his gaze sharpening instantly. "Which two?" "I saw the ones from Oakland in the courthouse parking lot after I was wrongly detained. Today I spotted them near the bus stop. I think they were waiting for me." Ryder's eyes flicked toward the far side of the hall. Two men in black suits, earpieces in place, stood not far away, their gazes shifting evasively when they met his. Ryder's grip tightened on his briefcase strap as he signaled for his assistant to approach. "Take Malik to the VIP room, lock the door and let no one in, and get in touch with our internal security team immediately." Once Malik was escorted away, Ryder turned back, his eyes colder than Oriana had ever seen. He pulled out his phone and called the head of Martin Technologies' security division. His voice was sharp as a blade. "I want an immediate investigation into the two security personnel at the conference. Confirm who assigned them to follow Malik Martinez, and I expect a report before 6 p.m. today." Standing beside him, Oriana's heart pounded. She knew what Ryder was suspecting, and she also knew that if he was right, it meant someone within the board was pulling the strings. Evelyn's name flashed instantly, but she didn't dare say it aloud. When the keynote began, Ryder stood on stage speaking about the future of clean energy, the potential of solar batteries, and how Martin Technologies would reshape the global market. His voice was steady, each word sharp as ever, but Oriana, watching from the front row, could still see the alertness lingering in his eyes. After the ceremony, they returned to the VIP room. Malik was calmer now, though still shaken. Ryder stood across from him, his voice firm and resolute. "From now on, you'll have your security detail. I'm not letting this happen again." "But..." Malik glanced at his sister, his eyes mixed with gratitude and unease. "I don't want to cause trouble for you two. You're not causing trouble." Ryder cut in his gaze, locking on the boy. "The trouble is the people trying to intimidate you, and I will find out who's behind it." Oriana looked at Ryder, and for the first time she saw not just a businessman protecting his company's interests, but a man willing to stand in front of her family without hesitation. Outside Los Angeles still shimmered in sunlight, but the air felt different today for Oriana, a blend of hidden danger and newfound trust. And she knew the wall between them had just cracked a little more. That morning, San Francisco's fog was thicker than usual. From the top floor of Bayview Tower, the city below was nothing more than pale, blurred patches. But inside Ryder's office, The air was so tense, it felt as if it could be cut through. Oriana stepped in to find him standing by the window, one hand in his pocket, eyes fixed outward without seeing the view. His charcoal gray suit fit neatly over his broad shoulders. A deep blue tie knotted perfectly at his collar. On the desk lay a neatly clipped folder, the corner of the paper peeking out to reveal the Martin Technologies logo. "Ready?" Ryder asked, his voice low, but with an undercurrent of resolve. Oriana nodded. This would be her first time appearing in a board meeting, a gathering of the company's most powerful figures, and the battleground for the kind of covert wars she'd only ever read about in financial news. The 50th floor boardroom was an oval-shaped space with a long walnut table polished to a sheen bathed in soft golden light from above. Most of the board members were already seated. Evelyn was also there, in a wine-colored silk dress, her hair swept into an elegant updo. When Ryder and Oriana entered, a few glances immediately swept over them, assessing curious. "Shall we begin?" Evelyn's voice carried her thin smile, sharp as a blade. Ryder didn't answer. He pulled out his chair, sat down, and placed the folder on the table. His opening words were delivered in a tone so calm, it bordered on cold. "Before we move on to the main agenda, I need to address something." At his nod, the large screen behind him lit up. Security camera footage appeared clear and sharp. It showed 2 security guards who had been terminated entering and leaving the company's data storage area. The timestamp indicated this had happened just a few weeks ago. Ryder said, "This is a restricted area. Access is granted only to authorized personnel," and his eyes scanned the room. "I also have evidence that a member of this board reinstated their access." He clicked the remote. An internal document appeared, the digital signature plain and undeniable, Robert Whitley. The atmosphere in the room dipped. A few murmurs rippled through the air. "Robert, how do you explain this?" Ryder's gaze locked onto a silver-haired man whose face had gone rigid. They said they just needed to check the system. I didn't think Ryder cut him off, his voice still low but sharp as steel. "These 2 individuals are directly linked to the surveillance and intimidation of Malik Martinez, my wife's younger brother, and you gave them unauthorized access." Evelyn leaned forward, trying to interject. "Ryder, I think you're blowing this out of proportion. This is not a small matter." Ryder sliced across her words, his gaze never leaving Robert. "When a board member enables actions that threaten the CEO's family, that is a grave violation of security and corporate ethics." After several tense minutes of discussion, an internal vote was called. The result: Robert was suspended from all positions and privileges, pending the outcome of a formal investigation. Evelyn sat still, lips pressed tightly together, but her eyes flashed with a barely contained fury. One of her key pieces had just fallen off the board. Leaving the boardroom, Oriana walked beside Ryder, still slightly stunned by how swiftly and decisively he had handled the matter. "You knew beforehand?" she asked, her voice low, but tinged with curiosity. "I just needed a few days to piece things together," Ryder replied, glancing at her with eyes softer than usual. "But I was particular thanks to Malik, telling me precisely what happened that day." A quiet warmth spread through her chest. She knew that Ryder hadn't done this solely for the company's honor. He'd also done it for her family. That afternoon, Ryder took her to a quiet cafe near the harbor. They sat at a window table, her cappuccino in front of her, his black espresso in front of him. He slid a cream-colored envelope toward her. "This is for you." Oriana opened it. Inside was a letter of full scholarship acceptance for the Business Administration program at the University of California, Berkeley. She looked up, startled. "This? What is this?" he said. You've always said you only made it through your sophomore year because you had to take care of Malik. Now you can finish. This scholarship covers tuition and includes an internship program at Martin Technologies if you want it. Oriana's fingers tightened around the letter, a strange, warm emotion rising in her chest. Ryder continued, his tone slow and deliberate. Or, you could use it to prepare for launching your coffee brand. I've been thinking about investing if you're interested. The look in his eyes now was not that of a CEO negotiating a deal, but of a man genuinely invested in the dreams of the woman sitting across from him. Oriana's lips curved slightly. You think I'll agree because you're Ryder Martin? No. He smirked faintly. You'll agree if it's the path you truly want. The golden afternoon light poured over the bay outside the window, turning the water into liquid amber. Oriana knew this wasn't just Ryder's first victory in the boardroom. It was a step forward between them. Another stretch of distance had quietly but unmistakably closed. The autumn wind carried a chill through every street of Manhattan, but the atmosphere on financial and entertainment news pages was heating up by the day. In just 2 weeks, rumors about a contract marriage between Ryder Martin and Oriana Martinez had spread everywhere. Vague headlines, secretly taken photos, and a flood of anonymous sources poured in CEO Martin Marries to keep his seat. The coffee delivery girl, love story, or high-stakes gamble. Oriana read those words on her phone screen while sitting in her private apartment at Bayview Tower, her heart sinking. She knew the public would never easily believe that a man like Ryder, a cold, closed-off tech billionaire, could love a woman from such an ordinary background. But what she hadn't expected was for the rumors to spread so quickly and so profoundly. That afternoon, Ryder called her into his office. Light from the window fell across one side of his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw. He looked up from the stack of documents in front of him, his voice calm, but carrying something deeper underneath. We need to change the strategy. Strategy? She frowned slightly. If we keep our distance like now, the rumors will only intensify. We must show them this is a real relationship, at least in public. Oriana looked at him, unsure if she heard a contractual request or an invitation in his tone. You mean, we have to act, not act. Ryder paused for a beat, his eyes never leaving hers. Just let them believe. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. They attended the annual Green Energy Development Fund Gala in New York a week later. The event brought together hundreds of influential figures from business, politics, and art, with international media covering it live. Under dozens of blinding camera flashes, Oriana stepped out of the car with Ryder in front of the Plaza Hotel. She wore a black satin evening gown that hugged her figure with an elegant open back, her hair in a low bun, lips touched with a hint of red. Ryder walked beside her in a perfectly tailored tuxedo and black tie, carrying his usual air of cool detachment. The rapid clicks of camera shutters filled the air. Reporters fired questions one after another. Ryder, how did you and Oriana meet? Is it true? This marriage is a contract? Oriana, do you fit the role of a CEO's wife? She drew a deep breath, ready to keep walking inside, when Ryder's hand suddenly caught hers, giving a gentle tug. When she turned to look at him, his deep blue eyes were already close. Without warning, Ryder leaned down. His lips touched hers, slow but sure, as if the entire outside world vanished, leaving only this moment. Oriana could hear her heartbeat racing, her mind blank. She'd thought this would be just a performance like he'd said, but the way his hand rested lightly against her back and his breath mingled with hers carried a rhythm that wasn't calculated for the press. Camera flashes exploded like a downpour, but Oriana didn't care. When Ryder finally pulled back, his gaze held hers, deep, steady, and so intense She had to look away to hide her fluster. Inside the ballroom, music drifted softly and conversation buzzed, but Oriana could still feel the heat lingering on her lips. She tried to focus on polite exchanges with the guests, yet Ryder's eyes would find hers every so often across the crowd, and each time her heart seemed to lose its rhythm. When the gala neared its end, they left their table and walked toward the grand balcony overlooking Central Park. Under the soft golden glow of the lights, New York spread like a sea of stars. "You didn't have to," she began, but Ryder cut her off. "Didn't have to what?" he asked, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Didn't have to kiss me like that, if it was only to convince people." Ryder was silent for a few seconds before speaking slowly. "Who told you I did it to convince them?" Oriana turned, meeting that gaze, one that didn't look like a move in a power game, but like something real, something far more dangerous. And right then, she realized her heart had begun to betray the one clause in their agreement. "Don't fall in love with me." Outside the city still blazed with light, but inside, Oriana, another fire had just been quietly lit, and she knew from this moment on, nothing would be just for show anymore. That morning, a thin layer of fog covered the San Francisco sky, but the air inside Ryder's penthouse was so thick it was almost hard to breathe. Oriana had just finished pouring a cappuccino when her phone began vibrating non-stop. Notifications from friends, former co-workers, even strangers she didn't know, flooded the screen. She opened a link, and the first image made her heart drop. Wife of CEO Martin, once arrested for trespassing on university grounds, blared the headline of the country's biggest tabloid. Right under the headline was a grainy photo of her at 20 years old, hair tied high, wearing a faded gray hoodie. A campus police officer was holding her by the arm. Behind her stood a homemade coffee cart and a few trays of freshly baked waffles. Beneath the picture, the article detailed, Oriana Martinez had snuck into Redwood University, where she once studied to sell coffee and waffles for illegal commercial activity without a permit. The article deliberately omitted the truth back then. Oriana only wanted to raise funds to save the Eastbrook Community Center. In this place, she and Malik had received help after their parents died. That act of charity was nowhere mentioned, only a set of words sharp enough to destroy her reputation in the public eye. The doorbell rang. Oriana barely had time to gather her thoughts before Ryder emerged from his office. When he opened the door, Evelyn Martin stood there, her ivory dress perfectly tailored, her high heels clicking a cold clop against the wooden floor. "Seen the news this morning?" Evelyn asked, her smile as thin as a thread. "Quite an interesting story." Ryder stepped in front of Oriana, his voice dropping low. "Evelyn, get out. Now." But she slipped past him, walking into the living room, her gaze landing on Oriana as a predator pins prey in a corner. "Don't get worked up, Ryder. I'm just here to negotiate." A chill ran down Oriana's spine as Evelyn sat crossing her legs and pulled a slim envelope from her handbag. She opened it and placed it on the table. A copy of the marriage contract. "I know every clause," Evelyn said, her tone as casual as discussing the weather. 1-year marriage. $3 million monthly allowance scholarship for the little brother. And the most interesting clause, no falling in love. Oriana's hands clenched, her heart pounding. "If I make this public," Evelyn went on, "Ryder will lose his CEO seat for deceiving shareholders. Malik will lose his scholarship. And you, after this morning's illegal coffee seller story, you will lose whatever credibility you have left." The air in the room grew so heavy that even the ticking of the wall clock rang sharp in her ears. Ryder stepped forward, his voice like ice. "You're blackmailing." Evelyn shrugged lightly. "Call it providing an option." Oriana needs to disappear from your life immediately. No explanation, no trace. And I'll keep my mouth shut. Oriana's eyes met Ryder's inside them, a storm of anger, helplessness, and a kind of fear she had never seen in him. Evelyn had found the weak point Malik and Ryder's future. That night, when the city was asleep, Oriana sat alone in the darkened living room, the streetlights outside casting patches of gold and amber across the wooden floor. She opened her laptop and typed a short letter. Ryder, I know you'll hate me for this decision, but you've given me and Malik more than I ever dreamed of. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. Don't look for me. Oriana. Tears splashed onto the keyboard, but she didn't stop. When she was done, she placed the envelope on the dining table where Ryder always had his morning coffee. She packed a small suitcase, just enough clothes and a few keepsakes in 15 minutes. Malik knew nothing. She feared he would try to stop her. Leaving Bayview Tower, the night wind swept in from the bay, salty and cold. A taxi waited at the service entrance away from prying eyes and security cameras. She glanced back at the towering building through the car's rear window, its top swallowed in fog and darkness. Her heart clenched, but she forced herself to turn away. San Francisco faded into the distance. She didn't know where she was going, only that with every mile, the distance between her and Ryder grew, and the fragile thread they had just begun to weave had been severed in a single ruthless cut named Evelyn. Outside, the night ocean stretched endlessly. Oriana closed her eyes, breathing deeply, trying to erase the memory of that kiss in New York, the coffee mornings, or the look in Ryder's eyes when he protected Malik. But all of it rose sharper than the retreating glow of the streetlights. And she knew, even though she had left, her heart was still in that penthouse. That morning, the 50th floor boardroom of Martin Technologies felt colder than usual. Light from the expansive glass windows spilled onto the long walnut conference table, reflecting the stern faces of the board members. Evelyn Martin sat at the far end, her posture perfectly straight, the corners of her lips curved in quiet confidence. Ryder walked in his perfectly tailored black suit, fitting his tall frame and deep blue eyes as cold as a winter sea. He set a thick file onto the table with a sharp thud that echoed in the stillness. "Before we begin, there's a matter I need to address," he said, his voice low, deliberate, but carrying undeniable weight. He pressed a button on the remote, and the large screen behind him lit up with a series of emails exchanged between Evelyn and one of the company's legal assistants. The content revealed that Evelyn had bribed this assistant to obtain a copy of Ryder and Oriana's marriage contract, then leaked it to the press. A ripple of whispers spread across the room. Evelyn's expression stayed composed, but the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. "This is an unfounded accusation," she said coldly. Ryder tilted his head, a faint mocking smirk tugging at his lips. "I also have an audio recording of your meeting at Leclerc, where you handed over an envelope of cash. And unfortunately for you, that assistant has agreed to cooperate with the investigation." One of the board members tapped a pen lightly against the table. "With this evidence, I vote to suspend Evelyn Martin from all activities and positions until the investigation is complete." The motion passed almost unanimously. Evelyn rose, the sharp rhythm of her high heels striking the floor as she walked out. Her eyes like blades slid over Ryder one last time before she left, but this time there was no power in them, only anger and bitterness. After the meeting, Ryder shut his laptop, grabbed his coat, and strode quickly toward the parking garage. He had already lost Oriana once because of Evelyn's dirty games, and he wouldn't let it happen again. With only the few clues Malik had given him, Malik, who'd quietly kept in touch with his sister Ryder, tracked her down to a quiet neighborhood in Oakland. Sunrise Brews came into view on a street corner, its wooden door painted a soft, buttery yellow. the warm scent of roasted coffee drifting into the air. Through the glass window, Ryder saw Oriana behind the counter, her curly hair tied back neatly, a pale green apron hugging her waist as she poured a latte for a customer. She smiled at an older woman picking up a cappuccino, and Ryder's chest tightened. When he pushed the door open, the small bell above chimed softly. Oriana looked up and their eyes met. For a moment, she froze a porcelain mug still in her hand. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low, but with a faint tremor. Ryder walked toward her, ignoring the curious stares of the customers. "I came to find you." "Ryder, I told you." "No." He cut in, his voice deep and firm. "This time you're going to listen to me first." He stopped in front of the counter, his eyes locked on hers. "Evelyn's been suspended. I exposed her bribery of the legal assistant. That's over now." Oriana swallowed, but her gaze stayed steady. "And if something else happens, if I become your weakness again, something they can use to attack you." Ryder drew a deep breath. "I don't care. The company, the position, none matters if I don't have you." The space between them shrank. The hum of the coffee grinder and the chatter of customers faded into the background. "Oriana, I love you," Ryder said, each word weighted like a vow. "Not because you agreed to help me keep the company, not because of what you did for Malik, but because they are the only thing that makes me want to stay in this world no matter how dirty it gets." His voice trembled slightly, but his gaze didn't, and Oriana knew this wasn't a rehearsal or a calculated move. This was a raw, unguarded truth. She set the mug down and stepped out from behind the counter. Standing before him, the distance between them was no more than a breath. "You've put me through hell. You know that," she said softly, a small smile playing on her lips, her eyes glistening. "I tried to keep the no love promise in the contract, but failed." Ryder's brow furrowed as if afraid he'd misheard. "You just said, 'I love you,'" she admitted quietly, but certain. "And if I have to fight to be with you, I will." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go again. The scent of coffee mixed with the soft fragrance of her hair, and for the first time, he felt a peace he'd never known. Outside, the Oakland sun was setting slowly, golden orange light spilling through the glass window, wrapping them in a warm halo. All the wounds, the power struggles, the rumors, at least for this moment, were gone. Ryder leaned down and kissed her. This kiss wasn't to answer the press, nor to silence gossip. It was simply the affirmation that he had found what he wanted to keep for the rest of his life. That morning, the 50th floor boardroom was packed, the air so tense that every breath felt heavy. Ryder walked in wearing a light gray tailored suit. The buttons neatly fastened, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Oriana sat at the far end of the room, not as the contract wife anymore, but as the partner he had chosen to stand beside him openly. He stood at the head of the table, his voice clear and deliberate. "Today I propose an amendment to the company bylaws. Remove the clause requiring the CEO to marry before age 35. Several faces registered shock, and murmurs rippled across the room. Ryder went on, his tone unwavering. "If this proposal is rejected, I will resign immediately." A wave of silence spread through the room. Evelyn, now only a member in name stripped of voting rights, sat in the back row, her lips pressed tight, eyes blazing. She had lost much of her influence since the scandal, but had clung to hopes of keeping a sliver of power. Ryder had just delivered the final blow. The vote was swift. The marriage clause was abolished entirely. And with that decision, Evelyn officially lost every remaining foothold in Martin Technologies. She rose and walked out, the sharp clack of her heels striking the floor like punctuation marks of anger. Oriana looked at Ryder, a quiet swell of pride rising in her chest. He had chosen to protect himself and her, rather than obey an unjust rule to cling to power. A week later, Ryder appeared at Sunrise Brews, the little coffee shop where he had found her in Oakland. But this time, he wasn't there for coffee. He laid a detailed business plan on the table in front of Oriana. "I'm going to invest in opening Sunrise Brews locations across California. You'll be co-owner with full authority over flavors, style, everything." Oriana froze, her heartbeat quickening. "Ryder, I want this dream to be yours. It is not a gift from me, but part of a future we will build together." His eyes were so deep, they seemed to reach straight into her soul. Oriana smiled, her hand closing over his on the table. In that moment, she knew her dream was no longer something she carried alone. 3 months later, one morning, while reviewing the plan for the new San Diego branch, Oriana felt unusually tired. Malik teased that she was probably overworked, but another instinct pushed her to visit the clinic. The doctor smiled, turning the ultrasound screen toward her. "Congratulations, Oriana. You're pregnant, and not with 1 or 2, but 3 babies." The image of 3 tiny flickering dots like miniature heartbeats left her dizzy and overflowing with a joy she had never known. When Ryder returned to the penthouse that evening, she placed the ultrasound photo on the kitchen counter next to his morning espresso cup. He looked down, confusion flashing first, then slowly lifted his gaze, his deep blue eyes shining with pure emotion. "3 babies?" he asked softly, as if afraid to break the moment. Oriana nodded, her eyes glistening. Ryder pulled her into a tight embrace, his breath trembling as if the entire world had become more fragile and beautiful than ever before. 1 year later, the San Francisco waterfront glowed under the sunset. The sound of waves lapping against the pier blended with music and the chatter of hundreds of guests. Tonight was the grand opening of the newest Sunrise Brews branch right on the water, with glass walls overlooking the bay. Oriana stepped onto the small stage, cradling 3 tiny angels, 2 boys and a girl, with soft, curly hair and bright, starry eyes. The trio wriggled and babbled, refusing to sit still, drawing affectionate laughter from the crowd. Ryder stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her back, his gaze filled with pride and love. When the confetti cannons burst in a shower of color, she turned to him and, ignoring all eyes on them, kissed him long and deep. Applause thundered across the stage. When they finally parted, Ryder bent down to whisper in her ear, his low voice enough to make her heart tremble. "You were never just the coffee delivery girl. You're the one who gave me a family." Oriana leaned her forehead against his, her eyes shining with complete happiness. In the sound of the waves and the glow of the evening, they both knew that this story, born from a cold contract, had transformed into a warm, complete, and forever life.